Hey guys, it's Tatas Tuesday, and it's an off week from A Gamer's Guide to Feminism, and Momo is here with me. Yay! So this Tatas Tuesday is extra softness. Apologies if I have some trouble with my syllables today. I am struggling with allergies today for reasons I do not understand. I was fine yesterday. I am not fine today. So forgive me if I mispronounce words or generally sound like I'm talking like this because the post-nasal drip is real. But I want to talk today about mansplaining. And yes, it is inspired by Notch going off on Twitter in response to a female developer. It started as joking about a statue and then got serious. I thought the original joke about the statue was kind of funny. And then some guy jumps in to tell her something she already knew, which was it could be described as mansplaining. I don't want to get into the Twitter etiquette of this. I want to look at Notch's point, which is I'm going to say it, problematic reality of isolating condescending behavior, condescending speech, and attaching it to a particular gender. This is a sexist practice, and that sort of connects to the fact that mansplaining is a colloquialism, not an accepted analytical term, and a lot of colloquialisms do have a gendered component to it. And how do we know it's a colloquialism? Well, it's on Urban Dictionary. If something is on Urban Dictionary, it is slang. It is a colloquialism. It is not a scientific term. It's very important to not assign these colloquial spot checks more power than they actually have. And I think that's happened with mansplaining. Mansplaining, I think, had a purpose to discuss because, now hear me out before you guys freak out. Mansplaining happens in tech. It happens in video games. Trust me. If I go up to a woman running a game demo, I am not going to get now to start the game, press start. Oh, you've played games before. And I'm sure you guys think this is silly, but this has happened to me. Now, does this mean women don't condescend to men? No. I mean, I was just at my parents' with my husband last night. There was plenty of womansplaining going on, my poor husband. And this is the problem with the term. The term is a coping mechanism for something that does happen. But what, Notch is saying is that it's upsetting for men to hear. And I think that deserves some time and some consideration, because it is wrong to ignore signs of people saying, look, this is bothering me. Notch, being Notch, decided to get rather evocative about tying gender to an insult. And I think a lot of people missed his point in a rush to be offended. And I'm not saying what he did wasn't offensive. I'm saying sometimes there's room for offensive speech. I'm a Howard Stern fan. I'd be a complete hypocrite if I said it was okay for some people to do it because they have a radio show and other people not to do it. And this thing blew up in, predictable fashion because video game websites are always looking for a scandal that's going to generate clicks. And unfortunately, we're all a little too invested in that militant second wave revolutionary tactic where I don't care about your hurt feelings. And there's too much of that on the internet. You guys know here, I don't subscribe to that. Now, obviously, I'm not going to avoid saying something that is just fact to spare someone's feelings. However, when someone is making the comment that, this is not bothersome, but, this is shutting men down, making men more afraid to talk. And that's not what I think it was intended to do. And obviously, we're talking to the minority of men here. The mansplainer in question is simultaneously implied to be sexist or misogynistic instead of just not aware or not thinking at that moment. And this is something I've heard a lot in terms of feedback about men and feminism and why they're willing to listen to certain voices and not others, or more accurately, certain approaches and not others. And there comes a point in time, if you guys are watching my Gamer's Guide to Feminism, that people who are advocates for equality have to decide whether they're actually going to be an advocate for equality and actually do stuff that works, that does stuff that is effective. Or if you just want to be a voice of protest and scream and yell. I am of the mind that I want to do things that are effective. And this is going to mean incremental changes. This is going to mean baby steps. And my attitude is, if I am using a term that puts any large group of people off, in this case men, then that is not an effective term and I am going to stop using it. I didn't know when, the occasions that I've joked about mansplaining, that it was as hurtful as it was. I thought it was just a funny term that nobody took especially seriously. I used it as a coping mechanism because it does make you feel like you're not seen as an equal when someone tells you the basics of how to play a video game, especially when they're telling you to press start to start when the game screen is flashing press start. When it was my 6th E3 and I was still getting that, I'm like, you do have these moments where, like, am I ever going to be treated as an equal in this freaking industry? And so when the mansplaining term came along, I'm like, okay, this is something I can use to laugh about it. Now, people aren't using it to laugh anymore. People are using it as a clobber phrase. And this is where we get into trouble. And this is where, yes, I don't think it was inherently designed to shut men up. I think it is being used to shut men up. The problem we have with video games and geekdom in general is that we cannot assume the social fluency here that we can in other places. We can't assume ill intent. We need to focus on the behavior. But I think we can flip it around, which I think is kind of Notch's point here. And I don't want to speak for him. This is what I got from Notch's little deliberate attempt at being offensive by dropping C-bombs. And I admit, I really wish he hadn't done that. But I'm not going to dismiss his whole point because he did one thing I didn't like. I don't think that it is fair because some men condescend to all women, that all men can be assumed to deliberately be condescending when they're trying to be helpful. And this is the challenge when it comes to tech, that a lot of people, male and female, oversell their knowledge base because they're trying to be useful. Because a lot of people in this business get it in their heads that people don't want to just hang around them because they're cool. They only want to deal with them if they have something tangible to offer. And this is something that I've had to work on not reacting to. Because there are times that I'm just goofing around. I'm deliberately playing dumb for the sake of having fun. And somebody will come around and actually it's this, and this. And you're like, what a buzzkill. Like, yes, I knew that. I was just trying to have a bit of fun. But this person didn't know this. They were trying to participate in a conversation in a useful way. And that often gets identified as mansplaining, as it did here. And it did fit the definition of mansplaining, unfortunately. I'm not necessarily sure that was the intent. The problem is that nerds have been socialized all through academics that their role is to be smart. Their role is to have the answer. Their role is to be accurate. And I shouldn't be saying they as if I'm not part of this. This is something that really frustrated me going through school, was I was expected to always know. And when I didn't know something, it was, what, the brainer doesn't know? Oh my God, it was this big deal. And it really made me hesitant to admit I didn't know something. I was a quiet kid. I know, surprising, right? But I tended to just not talk when I didn't know something because I didn't want to be made fun of, because it made me feel like an alien. You can point out that someone is being condescending and just tell them they're being condescending. They're still not going to like it. They're still going to deny it. Trust me. But you have to set that boundary, especially if it's someone you work with. You can't assume intent. And I think that's a better way to handle it than this label of mansplaining, because it's just gone right off the rails. So I decided to not be one of those people, you know, piling on Notch because of the way he chose to address this issue. I think he made a good point, albeit in an offensive way. But like I said, offensive is okay sometimes. The guy's so rich, I don't think he cares what anybody thinks anyway. And to me, here's a guy with all this money, right? Here's a guy with all this success. Here's a guy that doesn't have to give a damn. It is more beneficial for him to just go, I'm just going to ignore this. Like, whatever. They're the little people. Instead, he decides to treat somebody like an equal and not believe beneath his notice and comment. Say that something bothers him. And if we flip it through a more positive lens, that this guy doesn't need to care and bothered to care, it looks very different, doesn't it? I know that thanks to Notch, I will no longer be using the term mansplaining, because my intent is not to hurt well-meaning guys who are just perhaps awkward or want to be useful. And so I'm glad he spoke up, even though he used words I didn't like. And I hope that people will be understanding of me when something is personal to me, and understand that, yes, I am upset at this point, and I am angry, and I am not watching my words as carefully as I should be, but that's human and that's valid. And so I'm hoping that by showing some understanding from somebody, even though I had a reaction to word choices, that courtesy will be extended to me in future. Is that too naive? Probably. I'm going to do it anyway.